All right. So, I've been talking about breathing recently. Well, I hope you've been doing that breathing exercise. 3 seconds in, 7 seconds out. It's important. It helps you inhale breath very quickly and helps you hold the oxygen and utilize it and then disperse your CO2 readily available. If you're just huffing in CO2 constantly, you will not be able to get the same pump. Now, hope you've been doing the stretching too. Various types of stretching that will get you primed for this and help you increase your ability to synthesize movement and action with these breathing techniques. Because I want you to, if you can, do some form of exercise, preferably with dumbbells. But you can go to the gym and do it with barbells too, as long as you have a spotter. And do the breathing exercise. Now, when you are transferring a tremendous amount of energy, your body will use the oxygen quicker. So you could go 3 seconds in, 4 seconds out, or 2 seconds in, 4 seconds out. That'll work. But as long as you're in the same rhythm where you're controlling your breath first and foremost, you're not focusing on putting as much weight up as possible. You're focusing on your breath. That is how you will gain true strength. So I hope everybody's having a good weekend. I'm getting ready to go to church here right after I record this. And I just wanted to crank out a quick episode. Hopefully it's decent, because a lot of my episodes recently have been pretty sloppy and quick. So, well, it hasn't been terrible. The biggest differences between cops today and cops in the 70s is that they only protect business owners. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that the institution of American policing was instituted specifically to get escaped slaves. There wasn't anarchy in the North because they didn't have a police force that, do what they do today. It was the traditional semi-feudal system where people looked out for each other and they protected each other with guns. And it was that simple. And that side won over the side with aggressive police forces that delegated their ability to exercise force and violence to a select group of well-funded individuals that would then work first and foremost for the plantation owners and second to middle-class voting citizens, and then not at all to Black Americans up until LBJ instituted the Great Society, New Society, whatever the hell he called it, that gave Black people citizenship rights, and that allowed good police departments to do their job properly like they already had been. But the ones that sicked German shepherds on and sprayed with hoses, Black people protesting for equal rights and stuff like that, those people were not having it. They were not having it at all. And those are exactly the sort of people to this day that have instituted these modern lynching practices where they kill Black people for fun and then parade it out around because people outside of that county can't exercise their political willpower on the police inside that county. Not if they have some shitty sheriff that is purely political and not pragmatic in any way, shape, or form, which is very, very common in the United States. And that is the exact reason why people associate this with, Black rights and anti-fascism and shit like that. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that Antifa hates me, but neo-Nazis also hate me. And I'm very proud to say that. It's very happy. It's a very good feeling to know that you're hated by both extremes, both sides of evil, both faces of the evil coin. It's nice. It feels good, genuinely. It's something that does not evaporate in any way, shape, or form, but instead allows me tremendous steel in my spine and light in my head. Did you know there's a group in Ukraine that calls themselves the Korn Group? Khorne, like Warhammer 40k. You know, that's that's your lovely neoliberal safe leaders safe in Israel sort of system you got right there. You have literal chaos berserkers as your infantrymen, and they're getting blown to smithereens by the Russians who have their their guns and holy relics blessed by the priest. That's great. You know, the Aztecs diverted a lot of water for Tenochtitlan, which is modern-day Mexico City. They diverted a tremendous amount of water that created it into a floating city so that they could be effectively protected. They put anybody invading them in a disadvantage and have floating farms going around. The long-term consequences, I believe, of that are, as shown today, because it's a complete barren basin, is that they wrecked the local ecosystem. They wrecked it, and out of that grew the hyper-aggressive might makes right Aztec culture that does not resemble the Mayan culture as much. Ooh, thunder. That's probably coming down from the polar vortex. Stay safe and warm up there, guys. Whew. But yeah, the Aztecs suffered from the wages of their own sins, whereas the Mayans just seemingly evaporated. And that's very interesting how you have a lot of traditional cultures that seemingly didn't do a lot of evil. They just evaporated at a certain time. Now, whether it's from they weren't accustomed to the sort of levels of death that grew resistance to various viruses and bacteria, or they were killed, or you have some other theory, you know, that's fine. But it's interesting that that lines up in that sort of way. The Supreme Court banned TikTok, but at least they kept Nestle child labor. Yay! 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 The company that is bottling up all the water in the world and storing it underground for billionaires, so it can rot and spill out, and the sort of people that are creating the same sort of ecological disasters that the Aztecs created with their hubris, they have protection from our lovely Supreme Court. By the way, that black guy on the Supreme Court, he used to be a black nationalist. Just to let you know, go ahead and look that up. You'll find out I am not lying like a vast majority of the things that I say on this podcast. I am speaking truth on it. And I don't think his positions really changed that much. He's just widened his, or actually narrowed his perceived in-group from black people to rich people. Seems to be about what's happened there. You know, angry people are usually angry because they are constantly in stress positions, whether that's caused by work, disability, or culture. They put themselves in stress positions, like the Aztecs. And if they're not funny, it's usually because of brain damage. Now, the Aztecs had this practice where they would take babies and they would put them in a device that would flatten out the fronts of their heads, which is exactly where your frontal lobe is, that allows for you to have executive thinking and long-term planning strategies. Yeah, quite interesting. You know, I knew a guy on kiwi farms who had like legitimate brain damage, and he's actually popped up in the comments section. I saw him. He would say the same thing over and over again, and he doesn't have ever, he's never expressed higher than like a 4th grade writing level. And, you know, I feel bad for the poor guy, but apparently he has a really, really well-paying job, and he just floods his money out. Oh, you know, more power to him. You go, little guy. You got this. Don't let your disability get you down, buddy. You got this. Anyways, the chronology of violence is such. First is killing for resources. That's called barbarianism, but ultimately it's not the most barbaric in this list. The second is killing for defense. This is the more honorable form of warfare. And the third is killing for reputation. After incurring some insult or slight, somebody looked at you wrong. You see this a lot in prison. And that is the modern form of war, most popular, is that there's some Muslim somewhere that looked at us crossways, and so we're going to go flatten their entire apartment complex and kill everybody around there. That's the modern form of war. That's what it's based off of. There's no calculation you can make to this body is worth that amount of bodies and et cetera, et cetera. It's literally just killing for reputation, for slights. That's it. Oh man, I hope my power doesn't go out in the middle of recording. That would suck. Oh well, I cleared up a lot of shit around the power line, so it should be okay unless it flickers somewhere else along the line. I better expedite this a little bit. You know, I watched the Mel Gibson Rogan episode finally. I've been meaning to get around to that, and it jived with me so well. Oh, I haven't even listened to Mel Gibson a lot, and he like speaks a lot of the same things that I do. He has trouble with evolution, but that's fine. You don't need to, like, you can be an evolutionist and a creationist at the same time. You can look at, if as long as you don't deny that the tadpole turns into the frog, I think we're good. I think we're golden. If you go, it's a robot, they're nano machine, and then you start making some shit up, some sci-fi shit that was programmed into you, like ancient alien shit. Like, how could we have built the pyramids? Slaves. Dozens of dynasties using slaves to build the pyramids, and you notice the pyramids get bigger and bigger the closer the ports of trade are where you could have gotten slaves. It's not a coincidence. Slaves and steam, and it's not even that cool. You know what is the pyramids really for? Nothing. I mean, it used to have a big diamond on top, and it used to be painted properly so that you would get a bunch of light shows coming down off of it. But that's, you know, that only lasts so long. Somebody stole the diamond. I'm so glad he talked about the history of the papacy. He's a sedevacantist, and I know a lot of sedevacantists, and they're a good group in general. Sometimes they can get a little off the rails, but in general, I align with them pretty much. As a Catholic, I align with the sedevacantist mostly. I just wouldn't want to call myself a sedevacantist because that would allow that group to speak for me. Naturally, like, as a follower of Christ, I delegate all my decisions to my interpretation of Christ's message that has been metered and grown throughout my entire life, and then I don't assume. This is the big key here, is that I don't assume that I'm like way up here, because I'm actually a little bit farther up than I used to be, or I can recognize myself as, in my opinion, higher up than other people on my understanding of the things. I might not be in a variety of different ways. Never trust the person who says they have no ego. Trust the person who can accurately define the contours of their ego, and then there's probably still a lot that I don't know about. You know, for some reason, some folks like to hoot like chimps about UFOs, but then get real quiet about Christianity. And I just have a feeling that those people know who butters their bread, because the people who butter their bread have the same sort of, shrink back at the cross sort of Nosferatu beliefs, while at the same time loving the concept that, like, my aliens did my Abraham. You know? Not the fact that Abraham straight up denied the Canaanites, straight up said, nah, I'm not killing my son, fam. Not happening. Bye-bye. And so they got to live in shit land, but they developed it by being good monotheists. And they kept on falling away and falling away and falling away. There's so many golden calves out there, but at the end of the day, you know, there was a core contingency that gave birth to Christ. And that was what it was essentially for, just like Zoroastrianism. You know, it contributed to the overall conceptualization and realization of a higher central focal point, which eventually would be brought to wonderful scientific conclusions with the theory of the Big Bang. That's not an anti-creationist theory, let me tell you that right now. In fact, it was invented by a Catholic man who was close friends with Albert Einstein. I agree that there is a suspicious amount of money and fraud around archaeology, though. Epstein was known for his archaeological exploits, and yeah, there's a lot of creepy freaks out there with deconstruction equipment tearing apart mountains just so that they can flex on it. You know, ultimately they're just gathering rocks and selling the rocks, you know, to foundries and construction equipment stores and stuff like that, and hunting for little things that they can also sell. They're ultimately just tearing apart the resources of the land to give birth to this nasty modern, like, they don't care about history, they don't care where things came from. Now, the people who were focusing on genomes, that is the more interesting factor of all this, is the genomology. those people seem to really care about accuracy, and they ended up describing so much in the long run. I've been skeptical of vaccines since, hearing from the Desert Storm, Desert Shield vets that I talked to since I was a little kid. And I've never met a single one of them who hasn't been damaged by vaccines that they got during that operation, those wars waged on behalf of the Saudi government. Thanks, Reagan. Thanks, Margaret Thatcher. That's ultimately Margaret Thatcher. Then I found out there are tons of reports from poor communities about being hurt by vaccines, about their children being hurt by vaccines, and that don't seem right. That don't seem right at all. And I'm glad that I was because I was one of the early proponents against vaccines on kiwi farms. There was a guy named Dude Weed who had become Dude Rabbits. He was also early proponent of skepticism. Although he got a little bit crazy thinking that it would kill you completely if you got vaccinated. It's not that intense. You'll be fine if you got vaccinated once, if you got boosted once. You'll be fine if you eat healthy and you don't, here's a big thing. It was an intramuscular vaccine, so if somebody was dumb enough to shoot it into your veins or arteries, it would go to your heart and fuck your heart up. That is a fact, Jack. That is a absolute fact. And they were just so sloppy and lazy that a lot of nurses didn't know any about that, and some of them didn't care. And I feel for nurses in this country. They suffer tremendously, but there are some straight up like demons who've gotten those jobs, who've gotten jobs as nurses, who've gotten jobs as doctors. There's some straight up demons. Straight up. I'd love to get into a debate with a Protestant about their opinion on demons and how that relates to saints interceding in behalf of heaven if there are intercessors on behalf of hell. A lot of Protestants will start screaming about worshiping saints and worshiping Mary and stuff. That's just what they're programmed to do. They have literally been programmed from a young age to think that the first commandment, which is say, take no other false gods, take no other gods before God, love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, means that it completely discounts Virgin Mary. It completely discounts the saints, which is to say, if there is no possible way to be perfect and get an A+ on your report card and to, be a paragon, then it's exactly the sort of things that you see with Protestants sinking into sin very, very frequently, a lot of times sinking into atheism. A lot of country people think, take it from me, I'm a country boy. People think that country boys are just like, hey, Paul, I caught me, I was tagged and bagged a tourist from the city. I got a city boy. You want me to shoot him again? No, it's more like, thought about. Hold on, let me get the accent done. Thought about God and God, I don't know why I keep on trying to go British. I ain't thought about God and 10, 15 years, but that jelly roll guy, I like that jelly roll guy. That's actually unfortunately where a lot of the Protestant South has gone. Thanks, Confederate shitheads. Now, one can hope that the Confederate shitheads can funnel into the MAGA movement because that is significantly better. But good God, the Confederacy fucked multiple generations, just completely and utterly fucked them. And for what? For international trade routes for your Jewish masters? Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a fucking lot. I grew up in a fucking town where they had fucking KKK rallies up and down the street. That shit was bullshit. Scared the shit out of my mom. Fuck you guys. Or see you in the street and slapping the shit out of you, bitch. Alright. Back to on it. A big part of being a Christian is abandoning the pagan beliefs that grew out of the desert that have been subsumed under Islam and Neo-Judaism. And if you want to be a good Christian, you can't live in that desert and think that everything is okay. You gotta actively work on making the world more beautiful on earth as it is in heaven. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. You think that, it's fine, the book of Revelation says that the world's going to be on fire. It's Mormons being vain enough to think as little babies that they can do to their parents. Vain enough to think they can twist God's arm and force him to enact the revelation in their lifetime. But the revelation is just an unveiling. And the apocalypse happens in local areas. You know, it might spread to the peripheries, but only if there's not a strong border of people who worked hard, not like Texas, not like North Mexico, but people who have worked hard to maintain it and grow it into something other than a barren fucking desert. Like a lot of places around the Mississippi River are turning. It's a shame. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world at one point. C'est la vie. The resurrection is a metaphor for the hero's journey. Whether or not you believe in a literal or figurative resurrection, abstract or concrete resurrection, it is a metaphor for the hero's journey. The hero's journey is the most common theme throughout all of the stories our ancestors told, where one goes down into hell and transforms into something and then rises. And that's the rite of passage. That's the quest. And it's as simple as that. If you struggle with understanding that. That's just the problem, is that the South was never set up with a proper education system, so they don't read. However, you don't want to get your education system like the only thing. This is what the communists tried to do, is they thought that the education system would be the only thing in kids' minds, and that just the survival would be delegated. The resource intensive practice of allowing your children to survive delegated to the parents, but everything in their higher thinking minds was delegated to the state. Prussia started that. The Masonic Prussians started that, and they want to know why? So that they could build 1 million soldiers a year. That's why. Or maybe not a year, but it's essentially the on paper goal was to build 1 million soldiers for the army. That's it. You know, you get the proper engineering. That's why engineering is so big. You get the right acculturization, the propaganda, and then you go off into the military, or you become part of the cubicles that assist in the military's operation. Like a lot of these horrible JAG officers, like that guy who did the New Orleans attack, or our Governor DeSantis. These JAG officers are the worst out of all of them. These contracting fucks. Terrible. Awful. Evil. Most of them. Not all of them. Jag-offs. And what's interesting is, like, you know, tier 1 guys, the specialists, they're pretty cool, but ultimately they have focused so much on the hero's journey, on the quest, that they don't have the excess, they don't have the other factors of life. And so they're specialists. They have narrowed themselves into a spear. And I can respect that, but at the end of the day, it's not like... It's an important part of society, but it's not the best expert for everything. Of course, naturally. What we talk about a lot on this podcast is the fact that the bell curve only applies to a certain set of questions. And you could have savantism, and you could have Mensa idiots. And in fact, you do. And that doesn't make, Japan any less brilliant. Anyways, the Women's March was forced to change its name to the People's March. Oh, no! Oh, gosh. You know what's interesting about women's suffrage is it was all started by really bored Protestant women who rose up the ranks in the economy when their husbands went off to war. That's where it came from. Legitimately. World War I. Thanks, Woodrow Wilson. Yes, it is what it is. The going to war part, for no reason, that was the start of our problems, and I think it's the paramount problem there, of which all the other problems radiate. You know, if Noel wrote me an email apologizing for lying about me and said he'll give me back my original account with 80,000 points, and I wouldn't go, oh, you gotta publicly apologize. No, fuck that. He's not gonna do that. I just want a little humility and honesty, though. And he will think about that when he's older. But he's probably not thinking about that right now. And you know what? That's fine. But you know what? No, you can email me and apologize. I would accept that apology if it's humble. It's as simple as that. One of these days, it's gonna have to be made right. And I'm not the one that holds the scales, brother. Oh, well. That's a good episode. Sorry about yelling. I hope it didn't peak your microphone, or my microphone, in your ears. Well, I gotta finish up getting ready for church. Take off. All right, guys. Take care.